Welcome to Pretty Lies and Alibis. Let's seek the truth and travel the long road to justice together. What you know, Alibis, hope you're having or had a really good Wednesday. It's 11:15. I've been on the go for 12 hours solid, y'all. There's so many things that I have put off covering this Wagner trial and just kind of being mom that today I just had to break down and hit that road and do some stuff, including getting this mop cut. I think I lost 7 pounds when it got cut off. All right. So thanks to everybody who has donated and bought merch. And song fact of the day before we get started, Ordinary World by Duran Duran. I have to say, maybe this and Nothing Compares to You by Sinead O'Connor may be the biggest battle for my favorite number one song of the 90s. Although there were some really good songs that came out. But this single, Ordinary World, was written by one of the lead singers, Simon Le Bon, who was dealing with the loss of a friend and paying honor to loved ones who have died. The song serves as a remembrance of times gone past and details the occasional yearning for those times that everyone experiences when dealing with the death of a loved one. And it's weird because that song popped on my shuffle when I was like 2 minutes from home. And I just, even though I could have walked in and listened, I just sat in my car and listened to the rest of it. And it's very real. You think about it, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. For me personally, I've lost my aunt this year, who was like a sister. I lost my uncle pretty much within a short time frame. And so we're feeling that these days. And then you think about these cases that we're covering. Some of these families are doing their first Thanksgiving without their loved ones, and they died violent deaths. So there is a whole added layer to that. And then you think about the Wagner trial. I have a little update at the very end about George Wagner. 8 members of one family gone. So the holidays will never be anything remotely normal for any of these families anymore. There's always going to be that what if? What if? Because when somebody dies of an illness, that's one thing. At least in your mind, you can say, I mean, it stinks. People get sick, but they get sick. But murder is just, it didn't need to happen. These were people that were all healthy and living life. And now there's empty seats tomorrow and Christmas and birthdays and everything else. So, but we do have a bit of good news in the Shanquella Robinson case. Right before I was actually going to start this, I got an alert on my phone that an arrest warrant has been issued for someone that authorities have not named, but they are calling a direct aggressor in the death of Miss Robinson. The person is being sought by international authorities for the charge of femicide. What is femicide? Well, Michael Letary, who is an expert on the charge, told ABC News that when a woman is killed in countries where femicide is a charge, that means that they look into whether she was killed for reasons due to her gender or if there were certain circumstances like domestic violence. So prosecutor Rosa Anya told ABC News the case is fully clarified. We even have a court order. There is an arrest warrant issued for the crime of femicide to the detriment of the victim and against the alleged perpetrator. She says a friend of hers who is a direct aggressor. You don't need enemies when you got friends like that, y'all. Actually, it wasn't a quarrel, but instead a direct aggression. If you've seen that video, it is very disturbing. It's really, I only watched it once. I can't watch it. That poor girl wasn't even fighting back. She just wanted to have a good time in Cabo. You could tell she didn't want this to, oh gosh, man, I can't even watch it. Apparently there is a second video as well, but the prosecutor goes on to say we are carrying out all the pertinent procedures, such as the Interpol alert and the request for extradition from the United States of America. It's about 2 Americans, the victim and the culprit. So Miss Robinson's mother, Salamandra, said, I feel so good. That's a good feeling. That's what we've been waiting for someone to finally be held accountable and arrested. I can't wait for justice to be served. We all know yesterday on the episode talked about her cause of death on her death certificate was listed as severe spinal cord injury and atlas luxation, while her friends say it was alcohol poisoning, which is absolute hogwash. So atlas luxation, essentially, if you want to put it in really simple terms, it's almost like being internally decapitated. That's what happened to this poor woman. She was beaten very severely and died from it and laid there for 3 hours in the villa. Go figure. So another one that I have been watching but just haven't had time to really dive into because of the trial is the University of Virginia shootings. And man, just again, here we go with young people having a good life, doing their thing, and then you get some mad person, some crazy person who just ends it. So 3 football players for the University of Virginia were shot and killed on Sunday, November 13th, and 2 others were injured. Gunshots were reported in a parking garage near the university's drama building around 10:30 p.m. There were 25 students on a bus. They had returned from a field trip where they had been into Washington, D.C. to watch a play. Now, the killer, Christopher Darnell Jones, was also on that field trip and on that bus. So Deshaun Perry was a linebacker. And then we have wide receivers, Devin Chandler and Lavelle Davis Jr. They were shot and killed by Christopher Darnell one day after the team's game against the University of Pittsburgh. Also, running back Michael Hollins was injured. He was shot in the back, and another student, Marley Morgan, was injured. They both, thank goodness, have been released from the hospital. So Lavelle Davis was from Charleston, South Carolina. He's a homegrown boy. He's low country, I'm up country, but we are all neighbors here in South Carolina. He was set to graduate in December, and he was a first child, and he was called a role model to his younger siblings. His father, Thaddeus Davis, said he found out about the shooting Monday morning from his wife, who had called him at work. He said, "I lost my baby. This is my firstborn child." He could light up a room with a smile. He was focused on school, football, and his family. He enjoyed watching 90s movies, reading Shakespeare plays, and the Bible. I tweeted out a really sweet video of Lavelle from last year getting baptized. And it was just a very touching video. And he looked so proud and he had the biggest smile at the end. So if you have Twitter, Pretty Lies and Alibis, at Pretty Lies Alibis, I think. Lord have mercy, y'all. I done forgot my Twitter handle. Let's see here. What is it? Pretty Lies Alibi on Twitter. My bad. Next one is Devin Chandler from Arlington, Tennessee. He had actually just transferred to Virginia from the University of Wisconsin just in this past offseason. His coach from up there in Wisconsin said he had a lasting impact on his teammates. And even after he left, he had a big impact, which is a testament to the type of person he was. He said his personality was infectious and he was a joy to be around. Our team is hurting for him and his family. University of Virginia head coach said that Devin was not only a great football player, but a great big kid who loved to smile, sing, and dance. His high school coach recalled when Devin's father passed away in the middle of the season, his junior year in high school. And he came up to his coach and said, "I want to play this week. My dad would want me to play." He said that was his character, always thinking of others. And then Deshaun Perry. He was a fourth-year student from Miami, and his family said in a statement he was a loving, giving, caring, God-fearing young man who was full of life and potential and who made his family proud. His positive impact was not only felt by our family, but also by the several communities that genuinely loved Deshaun and that he was blessed to be a member of. A friend of his named Tran, she met Deshaun her freshman year. She said he was an amazing studio artist. He loved anime. He loved to cook and was one of the most loyal people you'd ever meet. I wish that more people knew more about him. He was very reserved. But I think it was because he saved all of his love for those who were close to him. Speaking about his artistic side, she said he was very, very artistic and he could draw, shape pots with clay. He loved music. He was very well cultured and very well rounded. And now it's time for a word from our paid sponsor of the week, The Vanished by Wondery. It's hard to imagine losing a loved one, a wife, a husband, a child. For many, including me, it's our biggest fear. From Wondery, The Vanished is a podcast that tells the stories of often overlooked and unsolved missing person cases. Every week, host Marissa Jones dives into a new case, sharing the details of their mysterious disappearance from interviews with family, friends, law enforcement, and even suspects in an effort to reveal the truth. The Vanished has even aided in getting long overdue arrests through their in-depth interviews. Marissa reminds the listeners of the human behind the headline and aims to help family members find their vanished loved one, or at least a sense of peace. I love this podcast because missing person cases oftentimes fall out of the headlines, leaving only family and friends to seek the truth. Follow The Vanished on Amazon Music, Apple Podcast, or listen early and ad-free by joining Wondery Plus in Apple Podcast or the Wondery app. Michael Hollins, who was injured in the shooting, was initially in the hospital. He had a couple of surgeries and he had a trach in his to breathe for him. And his mom said while he had the trach, he couldn't talk, but he had written Deshaun's name and he had written Devin's name. And then she believes he had written an L. She said, I don't know what he was writing at the bottom, but he was taking the marker and beating it because he wanted to know. When his ventilator was removed, he thanked his doctors and asked his mom, where's Deshaun? They were best friends. She said everybody in the room went silent and he knew. He knew what had happened. And she said, it was like a cry I never heard before in my life. It was so deep. Mike was said to have escaped the shooting, but he went back in to help his roommate or his teammates and he was shot. Marley Morgan was also injured. They are both out of the hospital. Thank goodness. At least they're doing okay. It's going to probably be a very long time, if ever, that this doesn't affect them on a very deep level that most of us could never understand. So who did this? Christopher Darnell Jones, 22 years old. He was arrested 75 miles from campus on November 14th, just about 12 hours after the murders. He's been charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder and 3 counts of using a handgun in the commission of a felony. Probably going to grab a couple of attempted murder charges and some other stuff if he hasn't already. I couldn't find it just in the little time I looked. But 19-year-old Ryan Lynch, who is a pre-med student who was also on the bus and witnessed the murders, told KYW-TV that Chris got up and pushed Lavelle. Then he started talking about things like, you guys are always messing with me. He said something weird like that, but it was very bizarre because they didn't even talk to him on the whole trip. We thought he was going to shoot everyone on the bus at that point. There just kept coming more and more gunshots. The shooter then sort of just walked or skipped off the bus, and then I saw him pass. Speaking of the victims, he said one victim had so many gunshots in him. And he also said that all of the men had such a beautiful spirit to them. They always had a smile on their face. They never showed any level of exhaustion. So personable and so kind. We also know that Jones was a walk-on member of the football team in 2018, but was listed as never appearing in any games, and he was never listed on any future rosters. So clearly not the best player to ever grace that football team. I love me some college football, y'all. His mother spoke over the phone to NBC News saying that he actually had lived with his grandmother since he was 16 and she didn't know his whereabouts or anything that would have led up to the shooting. He does have a criminal background. He was arrested February 22nd of last year in Chesterfield County, Virginia on a concealed weapons violation. He was convicted of that on June 10th of last year and given a 12-month suspended sentence. At the time of his arrest for that, he had outstanding warrants for a hit and run and reckless driving out of Petersburg, Virginia. Guess what? He was also given a suspended sentence for that in October of last year. In September of this year, the Office of Student Affairs had received a tip that he had told someone who was not a student at the school, by the way, that he had a gun. The matter was given to a multidisciplinary threat assessment team that is affiliated with the university. They also learned of the convictions, and his roommate said he never saw a gun when questioned. And Jones just didn't cooperate, wouldn't answer their questions. And due to his failure to cooperate, and also his failure to disclose his prior arrest for the concealed weapons charges, they escalated his case for disciplinary action on October 27th, which was just a little more than 2 weeks before the murders. There was also a hazing investigation into Jones, but the witness did not cooperate, so that case was closed. Prosecutors said in his first appearance that he seemed to be aiming for specific people and not just randomly shooting. Devin Chandler was asleep when he was murdered, And in his first hearing, he appeared via video. He was emotionless and said, I will be seeking my own counsel, but a public defender was appointed on a temporary basis for him. So Dance's Sporting Goods confirmed that he had purchased firearms for them earlier this year and had attempted to purchase from them back in 2018 as well as 2021. So December 31st, 2018, he attempted to buy a handgun, but he was under the age of 21. Then on July 8th of 2021, he attempted to buy a Smith& Wesson 22 caliber rifle but failed the background check. They said they afforded these attempts to the police, but February 19th, 2022 of this year, he was successful. I'm not sure how you fail a background check between July and February, and you can't get one in July of last year, but you can get one in February. If anybody knows why that might happen, let me know in the comments or something. But so on February 19th of this year, he bought a Ruger Model AR 556 caliber rifle. And again, on July 8th of 2022, he purchased a Glock Model 45 and a 9mm pistol with an additional magazine. They said there's nothing noteworthy about these purchases. And a man who answered the door claim at a relative's house said he was his 19-year-old brother. He said he just got fed up. Nobody was listening. He had nowhere to go. He had nobody to talk to, so he finally gave up, and that's life, right? No. We all have hard times, and most of us don't go around shooting people. Everybody's got their breaking point. He did not elaborate on bullying or anything like that, but he did blame the murders on bullying. But he didn't say what circumstances, who bullied him or what. His father also told reporters that he last talked to his son about a month ago. He said he had some problems. Last time I spoke to him, he said some people were picking on him or whatever. He didn't know how to handle it. I just told him, go to school. Don't pay him no mind. Do what you got to do. He was real paranoid when I talked to him about something. He wouldn't tell me everything. So the funerals for Deshaun Perry will be held on November 25th. Devin Chandler's funeral will be held on November 27th, and Lavelle Davis's funeral will be held November 30th in North Charleston, South Carolina. Just there's no words, y'all. No words. Little update on the University of Idaho murders. We had that press conference today at 4. Essentially nothing. They just regurgitated the written statement they gave last night. The only new thing really that we heard is that they did confirm that Kaylee's ex-boyfriend Jack is not a suspect. So let's hope the internet leaves him alone. It's been vicious. It has not been fair. And things like that ruin people's lives. So they have had 1,000 tips, 150 interviews. They collected 103 pieces of evidence, and 4,000 photos were taken at the crime scene, as well as 3D scans, the Faro scanner of the crime scene. They still will not release the 911 call, saying it's part of the investigation. There has to be something sensitive on there. I understand that you don't want to release it for whatever, but to not tell at least partially what was said on there, it makes me think something was said on that call. They said there were several people who spoke to the 911 dispatcher, maybe eventually. When asked who targeted one of the students, the spokesman wouldn't say. He said they don't want to be flooded with tips that aren't relevant. If they did release that information, and he said, you have to trust us as to why we think that. And I do get that. Look, the public's right to know an investigation. We want answers. Nobody wants answers more than the family and the friends and the loved ones of these victims. Hopefully they know a little more than we do. And I do think that law enforcement knows more than they're telling. But look, all I want to know is that they arrest the right person and there's a conviction. And I'm good with waiting if that's what it takes. It's just, you don't want to tip somebody off. And if they've got somebody on their radar, giving too much information could cause a whole host of problems that could delay or entirely prevent that person from being caught. So let's be patient, y'all. The FBI is there. They have like 22 agents there. They're on it. They're working through Thanksgiving but they really need to catch this person because that is one messed up and dangerous individual that is still among all of us. Don't know where he or she is. But also when he wouldn't say who was targeted, I thought it was interesting. He didn't deny that someone was targeted. Kind of read the tea leaves there. So maybe they do have a little bit more information about the order or whatever. I don't know, but I just thought if the reporter was wrong in saying, "Why won't you tell us who was targeted?" He said, "Well, we don't have any information anybody was targeted." So I just think that him saying, "We don't wanna tell that," and then get a bunch of misinformation. So, interesting. They addressed the rumblings that Kaylee may have a stalker. They've been told by people she expressed this to them. So far, nothing has come from that, but they are still investigating that avenue. Idaho State Police Colonel Kendrick Wills says, "We're not willing to sacrifice speed for quality. At this point, we know all the bodies have been released to the families. Ethan's funeral was just earlier this week. I haven't heard anything about the other funerals." George Wagner, we're going to move on. George Wagner's attorneys have filed an abandonment instruction to be read to the jury. What does that mean? Abandonment means the defendant, after conspiring to commit the offense, abandoned the conspiracy prior to commission of attempt to commit the offense, which was the object of the conspiracy, advising all other conspirators of his abandonment. So I don't get this. So, opening statements, George did not know anything about this until the phone call, and Jake gave an Oscar-worthy performance in the car. George testified for 2 solid days and said he had no clue, but now we're gonna give the abandonment and say, okay, he knew about the conspiracy, but he didn't go through with it. So, I don't know. I mean, but Anjanette Levy, our girl here, she is one of the OGs on this case. She was on scene the day these murders happened. She posted a response to somebody on Twitter who asked her, and she said that this is a proposed instruction and she doesn't see the judge approving this since George did not testify to any of this to support this claim. So that's very interesting. We'll see where that goes. Monday, starting closings. They anticipate the jury will have the case by Tuesday. How quick or how long will it take? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. All right, guys, I am watching all this stuff. If anything new comes out tomorrow, I will be back on to update, especially Shanquilla Robinson. I think that it probably will not take too long to apprehend the direct aggressor. And then facing, if convicted, 40 to 60 years in prison in Mexico. She ain't gonna be in no villa. That's for sure. All right, guys. Hope you have a really great Thanksgiving, and we'll see you soon.